Authors want to sell more books. But it's hard if you're not visible. We can help. Claim your instant access to the 10 tips for free book promos from the Bold Authors Network at fictionwriterspodcast.com/boldauthors now. Welcome to the Fiction Writers Podcast with Lana McAra, where you will discover tips, tricks, and ideas for fiction that is #unputdownable. Here you'll find new energy, new perspectives, new resources, and new ideas that will spark your creativity into a blaze of brilliance. It's easier than you think. Be sure you visit our website at www.fictionwriterspodcast.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, get out your notebook, tune in, and let's get started.
Have you ever wondered how you handle a heavy message in your writing while still telling a great story? Well, that's what we're going to be talking about today. My name is Lana McAra, and welcome to the Fiction Writers Podcast, tips, tricks, and ideas for fiction that is #unputdownable. Today, I am delighted to welcome to the podcast Kae Wagner. Writing in the genres of modern fiction, family drama, and Christian fiction, Kae Wagner is a best-selling author who writes fast-paced, emotionally charged stories that will both break your heart and fill your soul with hope. Her strong female characters face challenges that reveal the human spirit's resilience and portray redemption. Outside of fiction writing, she works with introverted authors to promote their books and develop online micro courses. When not reading or writing, she slips away for her guilty pleasure of riding quarter horses in the mountains of Wyoming. Welcome, Kae.
Thank you. It's so good to be with you. I've been looking forward to this.
Do you live in Wyoming?
I don't. That's why it's a guilty pleasure, because
Okay.
I don't live there. But I love it. There's something about the mountains and the meadows, the valleys that's so amazing and so soothing for me. And from the back of a horse, and you have a group, there's something about the spirit of the animals, and then also the group just riding forward, and it charges me up.
Wow, it sounds amazing. My first, don't know exactly how many, 20 books were set in Colorado and Wyoming. So I love that area as well. Yeah, it's soul-filling.
It is very soul-filling. And there's something about a horse that is soul-filling too.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So before we get into the meat of the podcast today, did you always want to write fiction?
Well, I always wanted to write. And I did write short stories early on, and I wrote poetry. But I always thought maybe that angsty writing was just part of my passage, part of growing up, my own coming of age, and so then when I moved into business, and I'm an entrepreneur, so I've had a business for a long time, I wrote business books and primarily focused on marketing, branding, leadership. So they were business books. And I was like, my identity was I'm a business writer. That's what I write. But I had this story, and this story would not let me go. And so I said, okay, now is the time. I made a commitment to God that any fiction writing that I did would have a message of forgiveness and redemption. And so I set out to write the first book, and the first book is Saturday Night at the Trailer Park. And I was going to write a book. Then the story wouldn't let go of me, and it ended up being a series of 4 books. And the series is called the Frankie Girl series. And so it follows Frankie Girl as she meets challenges in the trailer park, and then as she becomes an empowered young woman who can make good decisions about her own life.
So how did you get inspired for that particular story?
There's a character in the book, Mr. Baylor, and Mr. Baylor is the messenger of forgiveness and redemption. And Mr. Baylor was my dad. And so In the book, Mr. Baylor brings the message of forgiveness and redemption to Frankie Girl, who has never heard of it before. And Mr. Baylor had convinced his church to buy a school bus. And so when I was a kid, that's what my dad did. He convinced the church to buy a school bus because my dad had a heart for bringing kids to church. And he, every Sunday morning, he would go on a route and he would pick up the kids and I would ride with him. And sometimes, my other siblings did as well. And so one of the places that we stopped on the bus route on our way to church was the trailer park. And I don't know what happened in the trailer park. This book is fiction. But even at 11 or 12 years old, I just thought the trailer park was a different kind of place. It was an interesting place, and I didn't quite know what happened there. It was different than anything, that I experienced. And so this story, the Frankie Girl and her siblings, her family at the trailer park, Saturday night at the trailer park, became the way for me to tell the story of forgiveness and redemption and honoring my father as the inspiration for that character.
Interesting. That is so interesting because I was one of the kids riding the church bus.
Oh, were you really?
I really was. I didn't live in a trailer park, but I did ride the church bus. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is a lot of sacrifice, a lot of dedication to do that week after week after week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my dad was very dedicated about that. And so, just even having interaction with the kids from the trailer park and the other kids kind of opened my world too, to things that in my, I grew up in a family on a farm, a conservative family. So there were things that, I was sheltered from. And so it was eye-opening. Also, one of the things that really impacted me as a kid on the farm was going to the library. And I will forever, forever be grateful to the library system we have because I love the library.
Yes, same here. Yeah, the library was the high point of my week.
It was.
Free time to go, in school to the library. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and come out with a stack of books and
yeah.
No, it was wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Love of books, I think, is a common theme among writers. We just love books, and I love the tactile feeling of holding a book.
Yes.
I've never been able to get into Kindle or any of that because I want the book. I want to hold it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the same way. I love a tactile book, but I travel a lot. And so as a result, I have switched to Kindle because, I can't carry my stack of books with me. Well, I could, but it's just an added burden when I'm traveling. So I do use Kindle. But I have noticed one thing about Kindle that having books does that you don't get with Kindle. And that is when you have a book on Kindle, you only see the cover of the book one time. And that's when you open the book, on your Kindle or your iPad or whatever. And after that, you never see the cover again. And so I discovered this when I was trying to remember the name of a book that I loved. And I realized that I saw the title, then I read the book, and I had only seen the cover like one time. And it was much harder for me to remember the authors and, all of that because it was in the digital, buried in the digital vault, as opposed to think about with a physical book, how often you see this book. Like you see the cover all the time and it's just, becomes imprinted in your mind. And I love that part, the visual part too, of having a real book, a physical book.
Yes. Yes. Even on the bookshelf, you see the spine. And, you go down through and there it is,
Right.
Yeah, that's one thing. When I'm writing, I like spiral, not spiral, 3-ring binders. I use a lot of 3-ring binders in my personal writing process because I can hold the book, I can write in it, and then I can put it on a shelf. And if down the road I want to do a sequel to this particular book, I've got everything in this binder. and I just pull it open and I can leaf through it at my leisure. I can sit there with YouTube on and leaf through my book, and I'm getting that information instead of sitting there with a mouse trying to figure out where the heck did I put it.
Yes.
The details.
Yeah. And I don't do that, although I think that's a beautiful idea. But I do a summary of every chapter, and I keep that in a folder, and then I go through that, and that's kind of like my Cliff Notes, on the book, so that I can, like, oh yeah, I remember that character, and we have a little bit of an open loop here that I might want to, look into, or this character could be developed more, and there's a relationship here that was started, but maybe not. We could delve into that a little bit more too. So those notes are really very, very helpful.
Yes, they are. So let's talk about that a little bit more. How do you develop your characters?
Well, my characters are very interesting because sometimes they just show up. Like, I am not a planner and I am not a pantser. And I have a story and I have an outline, but I wouldn't call it a planner's outline. I would call it a loose outline. But I know the key points, and I know how it's going to end, and I know who some of the characters are. And I trust myself as a writer. And I trust that when I sit down and I begin writing, that it's going to show up, and it always does. It always does. And so, for example, when I wrote Saturday Night at the Trailer Park, I wrote the first 3 chapters, and then I skipped to like chapter 16, 17, something like that, because that's when I introduced the character of my dad, Mr. Baylor. And when he meets Frankie Girl, I knew that was going to be the hardest chapter for me to write, because that's when he first becomes, it's apparent that he is the messenger of this, for this message of forgiveness and redemption. And I just wanted to make sure that I could write that encounter and that worked. So then I had this big gap from chapter 3 to chapter 16. And that's when I had like 5 or 6 characters show up, and the antagonist showed up. I was shocked when I met him. He showed up one day and I'm like, oh, Larry O, what are you doing here? And then he became one of my favorite characters. And so I know that sounds kind of loose, Lana, right? But it's not as loose as you might imagine, because as an author, as a writer, how this plays in your mind 24/7, how it is, for me, it is ever present. When I'm in a book or in a series, I'm plotting and planning and pulling it together, at the writer's desk. But the rest of the day, it's in my mind. And so I have found a little methodology that I want to share with you that has really helped me with my writing. It has helped me not only stay organized, but it has helped me increase my output dramatically. And that is, now when I write with dictation. In other words, I write to text. And you can speak 3 times faster than you can type in general. And so, particularly in Florida, where the weather is gorgeous, which you and I both get to experience, I walk and I dictate. And it's as simple as I pick up my phone, I hit my email, and then I hit the microphone on my email, and I start to tell the story. So I tell the story, and I walk and I talk and I tell the story, and I come back, I cut and paste it into my writing software, and I clean it up. And I have found that my productivity has really risen. I'm much more productive. So in 2024, I've been able to publish the 4-book series, in part because of being able to dictate to write. Now, there's cleanup and there's editing, but the amount of, let's just say, words per minute, per hour, however you calculate, has increased a lot.
That's a great tip. I do that to send email. I never even thought of doing it to add to the story, whatever I'm working on. Yeah, it's a great tip.
What's really cool about it is I can do it in really short periods of time. So let's say it takes me 20 minutes, 15 minutes to go to the store. I can write, I can dictate and drive, and what has happened, so it took me a little while to get into the cadence of it because you use a different part of your brain to do it. And at first I was like, this will never work for me. I was totally convinced it will never work for me. I am like a keyboard girl, right? I got to see it as I'm doing it because I edit a little bit, here and there. And then I realized that if I just relaxed into the scene, it became very immersive. And now, it became very visual for me. And so I have this, I guess it's a dopamine hit or something. When I come back from walking and I have this part of the, manuscript written, and I'm like, yes, I achieved it. I did it. And it's such a great feeling. And plus I'm outside and getting exercise all at the same time. So it's been a tip that I received from another author, and I love doing it that way. And I would recommend for your listeners to try it, and to try it not the first time around actually writing a manuscript, but try it first with your outline. Like just dictate your outline, because that's an easy one. You can, just grab snippets of it and put it in chapters and do that kind of stuff. And then you'll start to get a feel for it, and you'll see the productivity that you're able to get from it.
I tried Dragon Naturally Speaking back in the day. Now, this is back, quite a long time ago. And it was so clumsy, and I had so many corrections, and I just got discouraged with that. But the software they have now is so much better.
Yeah.
It actually is intuitive. I guess there must be a little AI in there. But it does such a better job. And just this week, I was on a call with a group call. I belong to a marketing group, and we get together once in a while. And one of the people put on the closed captioning in Zoom, which we're recording in Zoom right now. And he said, this closed captioning is very accurate. It's even getting the homonyms correct, he said. And I thought, well, maybe I could just sit in front of Zoom and, have the transcription working for closed caption. But this is even easier. You don't have to sit in front of Zoom. You could just have your phone and walk, drive.
Yeah.
Sit by the lake.
Yeah. And if you do it in email, it's already writing it. It's putting it into, the format that you want. Sometimes you have to be careful with, when you're doing punctuation or, say next line, or you create a new paragraph, whatever. But you learn those little techniques very, very quickly. And it becomes really very easy to do and fun.
Yes, absolutely. I send myself emails that way when I get an idea.
Yes.
So I'm used to using that, but not for this. So thank you very much.
Let me know what you think if you're going to practice it.
I will do that for sure.
Yeah, that's great.
So what is your technique for taking a heavy theme, forgiveness and redemption, that's pretty heavy.
Yes.
And putting it in a story that is engaging and people love? How do you match or balance those two elements?
Well, that is a very good question and a weighty question, because I cover some very hard, dark moments and some dark material. Now, for me as a writer, I knew that there was a light at the end of the tunnel, if you will. But I created a character in Frankie Girl who I wanted the reader to be rooting for her. I wanted the reader to not only feel her emotions and feelings as she goes through these challenges, but I wanted her to have some hope along the way. And so I built in characters who were rooting for her as well. So in getting the characters to root for her, we get this balance between the darkness of the material and knowing that there are people in her world who are helping her. They're going to help her get through this. And so she's really supported well. She's the kind of character who's very magnetic, and so she draws people to her, and she draws the reader to her. I think it was Hemingway who said, when the writer cries, the reader cries. And so there were times in this book when I was moved to tears, and there are those same times when I still am moved to tears when I read it. And I wanted that emotion to be expressed in that way through actually crying, because that is a release. It is a relief. And so I wanted to create this world that needed forgiveness and redemption, so that when Mr. Baylor comes in with his message, that world, that character is open to it. And so she has to go through this heartache and go through these hard times and be broken, if you will, broken, what I call broken open to receiving the message, and then to become aware of it and to embrace it, to start to practice it. You know, in the world, as Christians, we think that everybody just should know how to forgive and find redemption, right? That's kind of like a given for us. But people, the kids who are on the bus, they learn that. And it's not the same as, like, for me, I grew up in that kind of a family environment. And so in the book, I include, really simple steps about how to forgive people, how to seek redemption, how to help people find redemption, and what's the difference between one and the other, and why is it important. And so it's interesting because some people said, well, you were a little teacherly there. And I'm like, well, I have this message that I made a commitment about this message, and I am, keeping that commitment. And so maybe I do sound a little teacherly from time to time, but that's okay for me. Mm-hmm. And I think the feedback that I've gotten from readers, I have emails and phone calls and texts from readers who say, I cried in that book and I realized that I was not only crying for Frankie Girl, but I was crying for me too. And then I called my sister, who I haven't talked to for 6 months, and now we're talking again. And so I get these messages from readers that they're finding forgiveness in their hearts and they're finding redemption. And that, to me, is the ultimate measure of being able to find that balance, that people understand that the hard times do have hope, that there's hope and there's forgiveness and redemption. And for all of those who have known that for a while, it's really a call to, like, refresh yourself about that.
Mm-hmm. This is a subject that I want to just comment on, and that is something that I've been studying myself when it comes to marketing, and we're going to talk about marketing in a minute. Mm-hmm. When you are clear on your own values, mm-hmm. and you also connect to your readers on the basis of those same values, you create a synergy and a bonding with them. Yes. And you affect them and they affect you when you get that feedback. And so this is a beautiful synergy between us. And I know a lot of new novelists, aspiring novelists, or maybe you've got a book or two out, but you haven't really taken off, that haven't really grasped. This is from my class at the library, where I teach people at the library. And to really grasp that what we are creating here when we're creating a novel is a conversation with the reader, an interaction, a back and forth with the reader, so that our values are showing up in the story, touching the heart of the reader along those same values, and then they respond with an action, a shift in themselves, and they give us feedback. And so the calling to create fiction, meaningful fiction, is a deep calling. It is, it is not just fun and games and entertainment. There's a lot more to it than that. And this is true of anyone with strong personal values, whatever they may be, to find the readers that align with your values. So you can have this conversation with them. And that is a critical part of becoming a well-known, best-selling author with a following, is when you do bring your values into the book, because people need something to hold on to. They need to know where do we fit with each other? How do we align with each other? And so you're exemplifying that beautifully and articulating it at the same time, which is amazing. So I just wanted to highlight that to bring it forward, that this is important.
Yes, it is. It is. And, you know, what's interesting about that also is that when you find your readers, when you find your community, your people, and you start getting that feedback is so important, because authors really put it out there, and you are open to criticism and praise. Last week I get really good reviews, but I had a nasty review, and I was thinking to myself, why didn't that person just not read my book and give it to somebody else? Did they have to be a hater? It was that nasty. And so you have to develop a tough skin, a thick skin, if you will. But when you find that community of people and there is alignment in values, and the values can come to the forefront in the writing, I think, entertaining books are fine. There's nothing, we all need a little entertainment and humor and fun. But that's not what my commitment was. My commitment is to bring this message of forgiveness and redemption. And so forgiveness and redemption, by the nature of that work of forgiveness and redemption, requires that there is some heaviness. There's something to forgive. There's something, to be redeemed. And so that's partially why it went from 1 book to 4, because there was a lot to forgive and a lot to redeem. And we had to figure out how to put all of those pieces together. But I would agree in urging your writers, the people who are listening in on us today, to not be afraid to speak your message, to make a commitment to whatever it is that you're called to write about, and to take that story. And whether you start with the theme or you start with the story, just be true to that. And, they're not mutually exclusive. So in my case, I had a theme of forgiveness and redemption, which runs through the entire series. I had a story, and that story evolves over the 4 books. And then there's the writing. So there are different things going on. The story is different from the writing. The writing imbues and tells the story, but they're 2 separate things. And so often I think people get confused about that part. So writers need to write the story well, but the story can also stand on its own as a story. And I think if we know the story and we get really good at our craft of writing, we will have books that can bring the message out that we want. And that's how we begin to, create, even as we're writing, we begin to create that message I call it a promotion message. You would call it a marketing message, but we begin to craft that into the book. How are we going to use this theme in our promotions and in our marketing so that they are not separate from each other? A lot of writers think that, okay, I wrote the book, I'm just going to wipe my hands clean, it's published. Now people are going to, miraculously find it. They're going to stumble upon it. And then my book and my message will be out in the world. And you and I both know that doesn't happen that way. And so I don't want to segue into your marketing yet, your marketing message until you're ready. But this thing about values is very, very important. And being able to stay true to it. So that doesn't mean that you have to write in a certain genre or in a certain way. It just means that the story will carry a certain message that perhaps another writer wouldn't have in their book.
Yes, yes. I've had authors on the podcast. One of them has got a passion for bringing out the history of these small Native American tribes that no one has ever heard of and telling their story. She has some lineage to one of the tribes, and she's writing beautiful stories of these people. And that value system is about honoring those who've gone before.
Yes.
And bringing them back. They're lost. The memories of them are lost right now. Yeah. So let's go ahead and delve into this idea of marketing. And I love what you're doing. This is so much in alignment with what I teach when I teach my writing course. Embed your marketing message into the book. So when the time comes, it's easy to market. You've got something to say.
Right. Yeah, not only do you have something to say, but by virtue of the way that you write, you will draw to you a certain audience. And so, when we have a book and we write the description for Amazon or, wherever we're distributing our book, we want to have within that blurb, within the description, the words, the phrases that are going to connect the book to the reader. And, obviously we want to have everyone read our book and get the message, but it doesn't always work that way. Readers like a certain genre, they like a certain style. And so we want to draw the readers who are naturally, organically going to come into our world, who are a good fit between the genre, between the writing style, and between values, their values, and what they enjoy. And that's part of crafting a book. That's not just, slapping a marketing message together. That's part of crafting the book, the how you write it, the word choices, the phrase choices, the kind of characters that you have. How far do you go in a relationship? How much do you show of any physicality within that relationship? And being able then to translate that into a promotional message. Now, what I do in terms of promotion, I believe very, very, very strongly in this connection between author and reader. And to that extent, I started looking at where are those connection points, right? What can I do in my promotion? Because I have learned, so truth be told, I'm an introvert, okay? But I have learned to not be an introverted author. And I learned how to become a shameless promoter. I carry books with me everywhere I go. If we were in the same room with your readers, they would all have a book by now. And so that was the first thing that I did, give a book to everybody I meet. And then I really longed for this connection with my readers because I knew what was happening with them as they were reading my book because of some of the feedback that I got. And so what I have looked to do are, and here's what I would give to your authors as a tip, is look at those places where you can connect with your readers in a way that deepens the relationship. And that by that I mean what we are doing right now in this podcast interview is a way to get close to the reader, to have the reader experience who I am as an author, the message, the backstory, a peek behind, a look at the writer's desk. And that imbues the reader with so much more color into the whole story. When people know that Mr. Baylor was inspired by my dad and that little piece of inspiration, grew into the story, it gives them a different feel about the story. It gives them some insight into it. And so I recommend that authors look at promoting in terms of getting on podcasts and being guests. I recommend that authors read snips or clips of their book and make those video clips of them reading available for their readers. I do that. I'm not narrating my own books for Audible, but readers love to hear authors read their books. And so I do 3-minute snips. And for people who are on my email list, they can go and listen to those clips. And so I'm kind of working my way through Saturday Night at the Trailer Park now. So I look for things where readers can visually, audially hear me, see me, feel my tone, understand my emotion about the books, get that sense of this is not a book that's just between the front and back cover, but that it lives. To me, I'm sure it is for you too, Frankie Girl is like a real person to me, and the other characters are as well. And so being able to focus your promotion on those things that connect you with your readers at a deeper level, particularly in this genre, you reap a lot of benefits from that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love what you're talking about here, because it's got an organic, personalized feel to it, which is so different. When we think about marketing, we think about advertisements on TV and these things that show up in sponsored things coming up in social media. But this goes a little deeper than that, and that's where you actually connect to people.
Yeah. And so speaking of social media, when you think about, let's just say that you record a 2-minute clip from your book, you can post that on social media, and then you can, generate that kind of connection. So it's not so much the channel as it is the act that you pick to do. So rather than just posting, like people sit down and many authors are like, I know I'm a writer. I should be able to write this marketing message and I can't do it. I don't know what to say. I'm looking at a blank screen and I don't know what to say. That happens a lot. And so I always, recommend people go back to your book. Your book is content. Take pieces of your book. Tell little stories. Don't try to be the marketing wizard, because that comes across as fake and disingenuous. And what people want from you is your authenticity, and your authenticity comes out when you are in a conversation like we are today, when you are reading your book, when you're talking about your book.
Yes, absolutely. You have a marketing program. Tell us a little bit about that. I'm really interested in that.
Yes, thank you. In next year, 2025, I'm doing the Bold Authors Boot Camp, and that will be a series of 2 months of a boot camp where we are very focused on promoting. And I want to, I'm doing this one-on-one with some authors now, but we're going to do it as a group in 2025, and we'll run it, every 2 months, new group. And so it's for authors who avoid promoting, who avoid marketing, because it makes them anxious. They're afraid of it. They don't know what to do. And the particular angle that I take in terms of looking at promoting, where you are the visual aspect, or you are the voice of your marketing and your promoting, I'm teaching people how to do that. So they will come out of that boot camp. They will be booked on a couple of podcasts. I'm going to be doing a quarterly summit for authors, and I would welcome you to join me on that summit. Yeah. And I am going to have them by the end of the boot camp. They will be podcast ready. They will be promotion ready. They will not have the fear and anxiety that they have had in the past. I'm going to make shameless promoters out of them. And I'm going to do that by helping them be bold. And that's why I call it Bold Authors Boot Camp. I want authors to be bold about their work. And here's the thing, when you believe in your message, when you believe, like for me, my commitment and the message, then you don't want to be afraid to get that word out, because you want the whole world to know. And so, that person who gave me a bad review, too bad for them. I'm sorry they didn't like it. But you know what? That's not stopping me. I'm going to keep going, because the world out there needs the message of forgiveness and redemption. And I made that commitment, and I'm going to do it. And so the Bold Authors Boot Camp is a way for authors to come in and say, I have no idea how to do this. So we'll have a roadmap, we'll have practice sessions, we'll have specific things. I'm going to teach them how to do dictation. I'm going to teach them how to read for their videos so they can do those. I find that a lot of people literally choke their voice. They can't get their voice to do what they want because of how they're feeling, because of their anxiety. So we're going to work on, do some voice work and how to warm yourself up to be on a podcast, warm yourself up to be in front of a group and give an author's talk.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I love what you're doing, Kae.
Thank you.
So many people need this. Just thousands and thousands of people, need this. And I resonate with your message so much, because I was so introverted in college. When I had a speech, I wouldn't sleep the entire night.
I know.
I got bad grades in speech. It was the only, I say bad grades, I got C's in speech.
And you were an A student other than that.
I was a totally A student, and I got C's, and it really fried my bacon.
I bet. I bet.
And now I'm a public speaker, podcast host, and, this is something that I had to work through. And just like what you said, the message became more important than my feelings.
Right.
That's what broke me through it. And my books were the same situation. My books were more important than my feelings.
Right.
And I just had to get over it. And now I love it.
I know. Isn't it great fun?
Yes.
I get to meet people like you, and it's so wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. It is amazing. And watching the light go on in somebody when you give them some bit of information or an inspiration, you're in the front looking at their faces, and all of a sudden a light goes on, and you're just like, oh, I'm so happy I get to do this.
Yes. Yeah, it is truly a blessing to be able to bring the message and to see the change that it makes in people's lives, because it certainly has changed mine. I mean, Frankie Girl changed my life.
Yes, indeed. So
I'm still working on the forgiveness, though.
Yeah.
So people say this message of forgiveness and redemption, and I'm like, yeah, that's for me.
All of us, for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
So tell us how we can get more from you, your website or anything else you want to share.
Yes, I would direct your listeners, authors, to www.kaewagner.com. and that's Kae Wagner.com. And I would direct them there because they'll be able to get on my newsletter. And that's a weekly newsletter. And all of the things that I'm doing come out in that newsletter, the events, the podcasts that I have coming up. So they'll get a glimpse at what it looks like to be a shameless promoter. And they'll also be able to listen in on the readings that I do of my own books, some of the interviews with other authors, some reader feedback. There are tons of tips that I have about, testing out an idea, how to test a marketing idea, a book idea, how to generate feedback that's of value to you, even before you, put pen to paper or do a keystroke. So there are lots of ways that authors can help themselves during the process that makes the promotion aspect of it much easier as well.
Great. Kae, thank you so much. This has been an amazing conversation.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. I'm so delighted to meet you and welcome you to get on my summit too.
That would be great. I see great things ahead for us.
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And thank you for being with us today. See you next time. Bye now.
Thank you for tuning into the Fiction Writers Podcast with Lana McAra, where we share tips, tricks, and ideas for fiction that is #unputdownable. Remember to visit our website at www.fictionwriterspodcast.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Fiction Writers Podcast.